Texas sold you a dream. No state income tax, affordable housing, wide open spaces, and freedom from the coastal madness you left behind. You ran the numbers, saw Austin homes for half of what you'd pay in San Francisco, Dallas suburbs cheaper than Orange County, and Houston offering actual yards for the price of a Bay Area parking space. The pitch was perfect, the data checked out, you packed the U-Haul, and then you got the property tax bill. Here's what the real estate agents, the relocation consultants, and the 10 reasons to move to Texas YouTube videos won't tell you until you're already signed on the dotted line. Texas isn't lying to you, but it's not telling you the whole truth either. The state income tax you're not paying, you're paying it, just differently. The affordable housing, affordable compared to California, sure. Affordable compared to your actual budget after insurance, utilities, and the infrastructure that wasn't built for 1,000 people moving here every day. That's a different conversation. We're about to break down 6 truths about moving to Texas that nobody mentions until it's too late to back out. Not because Texas is bad, it's not, but because the Texas you researched online and the Texas you actually live in are often two completely different states. And which one you end up in depends on factors you didn't know to ask about. From property tax bills that devour your savings, to infrastructure that can't handle the population explosion, to weather that turns your budget into a crisis fund, to a power grid running on hope and thin margins, to the uncomfortable realization that you're not escaping California's housing crisis but importing it at scale, to discovering that the Texas you wanted doesn't exist where you can actually afford to live. These are the realities that hit hardest after you've already made the move. If you're thinking about relocating to Texas, or if you just got here and something feels off, this is the conversation nobody had with you before you signed the lease. Hit subscribe if you want the truth about American real estate markets, not the sales pitch. Drop a comment with where you moved from and whether any of this is hitting too close to home. Let's get into it. Truth number 6. Affordable means something different here. Let's start with the number that made you think Texas was the answer, that home price. You saw a 2,400 square foot house in Frisco for $450,000 and compared it to the 900 square foot condo in San Jose going for $1.2 million. Easy choice, right? You're saving $750,000, except you're not. Texas has no state income tax, which sounds amazing until you realize the state has to fund schools, roads, and infrastructure somehow. They do it through property taxes, and those property taxes are some of the highest in the nation. The effective property tax rate in Texas averages 1.6% to 1.8% depending on the county. In some of the hottest suburbs where transplants are moving, it's pushing 2.5%. That $450,000 house in Frisco, you're paying $11,250 per year in property taxes. That's $937 per month before you even get to your mortgage payment. California's property tax rate sits around 0.76%. That $1.2 million San Jose condo, property tax is about $9,120 per year, or $760 per month. You're paying more in Texas property taxes on a house half the price. And here's the part that stings. Texas property taxes aren't capped the way California's are under Proposition 13. Your assessment can jump 10% per year, and in booming markets like Austin, Round Rock, and parts of Dallas, that's exactly what's happening. Homeowners who bought in 2019 are seeing tax bills that have increased 40% to 50% in 5 years. Then there's homeowners insurance. Texas leads the nation in insurance costs, averaging $4,456 per year according to the Insurance Information Institute. Why? Hailstorms, windstorms, and the fact that the state sits in the crosshairs of every weather event the Gulf Coast can throw at it. In contrast, California homeowners insurance averages around $1,200 annually. You just added another $270 per month to your Texas budget that wasn't in the California comparison. Let's talk HOAs, because they run everything here. That $450,000 house in a decent suburb? The HOA fee is probably $80 to $150 per month, and it's not optional. Want a neighborhood with actual amenities, a pool, or maintained common areas? You're looking at $200 to $400 monthly. Some of the newer master plan communities are hitting $500 per month. These aren't luxury buildings. These are tract homes in suburbs that didn't exist 15 years ago. Add it up. That affordable $450,000 Texas house costs you $937 in property tax taxes, $371 in insurance, $150 in HOA fees. That's $1,458 per month before your mortgage payment, which at current rates is around $2,400. Total monthly cost, $3,858. The San Jose condo at $1.2 million. Property tax $760, insurance $100, HOA $400, mortgage $6,400, total $7,660. You're saving $3,800 per month, which is real money, but it's not the $6,000 plus per month you thought you were saving when you only looked at the purchase price. One local realtor told us off the record, buyers see the price and sign, then the first tax bill hits and they feel lied to. Nobody lied, they just didn't ask the right questions. Picture this, November in Frisco. You open the mailbox, pull out the property tax statement, and the number is 18% higher than last year. You appealed. It didn't matter. Your home value went up, so your taxes went up. The state income tax you thought you were avoiding, you're paying it. They just call it something else and send it twice a year in an envelope that makes your stomach drop, and it gets worse from here. Truth number 5. The infrastructure wasn't built for this many people. Picture this, Tuesday morning, 7:15 a.m. You're in your car in Pflugerville, coffee in the cup holder, podcast queued up for what Google Maps promised would be a 22-minute commute to your office in downtown Austin. You merge onto I-35, brake lights as far as you can see. The highway isn't moving. It's not moving because there's an accident. It's not moving because 400,000 people had the same idea you did. Move to an affordable suburb and commute to where the jobs actually are. By the time you reach your exit, it's 8:47 a.m., 92 minutes. You'll do it again tonight. That's 3 hours a day in your car, 15 hours a week, 780 hours a year. You sold your California life to buy a bigger house in Texas, and now you don't have time to live in it because you're trapped on a highway that was built in 1962 and hasn't fundamentally changed despite the population doubling. This isn't an Austin problem. This is a Texas problem. The state gained 4 million residents between 2010 and 2020, according to U.S. Census data. Another 1.4 million have moved in since. The infrastructure, roads, schools, water systems, power grid, was designed for the Texas of 1995, maybe 2005 if you're lucky. The Texas of 2024 is overwhelming systems that were never meant to handle this kind of growth. The Texas A&M Transportation Institute ranks Houston as the 8th most congested city in America, Dallas-Fort Worth as 10th, and Austin as 16th. Austin commuters lost 71 hours per year to traffic congestion in 2022. That's nearly 2 full work weeks sitting in your car going nowhere. The Katy Freeway west of Houston got expanded to 26 lanes in some sections, making it one of the widest highways in the world. It's still a parking lot every rush hour. Widening roads didn't fix congestion. It invited more people, who brought more cars, which filled every new lane within months. Schools are bursting. Round Rock Independent School District north of Austin had to absorb 70,000 new residents in a decade. The district opened multiple new campuses, and they're still operating at or above capacity. Parents get redistricted every few years as the district tries to balance enrollment. Your kid's school assignment changes 3 times in 5 years. That stability you moved here for doesn't exist when entire subdivisions appear faster than the district can build classrooms. Water infrastructure is cracking under the pressure. The Dallas-Fort Worth region is projected to double in population by 2050, but the water supply plans were built for modest, predictable growth. Lake Louisville, Lake Grapevine, and the other North Texas reservoirs are already strained during drought years. A 2022 study by the Texas Water Development Board found that without major infrastructure investment, parts of North Texas could face water shortages by 2030. You move to a state that might not have enough water for everyone who's moving here. A Reddit user in the Austin subreddit put it perfectly. I moved here in 2018 when everyone said Austin traffic was getting bad. I had no idea. That was nothing. What we have now is legitimately broken. The infrastructure will catch up eventually. Bonds get passed, roads get widened, schools get built, but you're living in the gap between the population explosion and the infrastructure response, and that gap is measured in years, sometimes decades. You wanted space and freedom. You got a longer commute than you left behind, schools that reshuffle your kids like deck chairs, and the creeping awareness that the systems holding this together are under more stress than anyone wants to admit, and we haven't even talked about what happens when the weather turns. Truth number Number 4, the weather will try to kill you and your budget. You researched Texas weather. You knew it got hot. You thought you were prepared. Then July hit and you realized hot is a spectrum, and Texas operates at the far end of it. Dallas-Fort Worth recorded 45 days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer of 2023. Houston's heat index regularly pushes 110 degrees Fahrenheit when you factor in the humidity that makes the air feel like you're breathing through a wet towel. Austin broke temperature records 3 years running. Your air conditioning bill is no longer a utility cost. It's a second mortgage payment. The average Texas household spends $1,950 per year on electricity, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. But that's an average that includes the 8 months when the weather is tolerable. During summer, your AC runs 24 hours a day just to keep the house at 76 degrees Fahrenheit. A 2,400 square foot home in the Dallas suburbs can easily hit $400 to $500 per month in electricity costs from June through September. That's $2,000 for 4 months of not dying from heat stroke. And you can't just turn it off to save money. Texas heat isn't "it's warm outside" heat. It's your house interior hits 95 degrees Fahrenheit by 2 p.m. heat. It's your pets are in danger heat. It's your shingles warp and your foundation cracks if you're not careful heat. You're not choosing to run the AC, you're forced to. Then there's the hail. Texas leads the nation in hail damage claims, with storms causing $2.5 billion in insured losses annually. Those beautiful spring thunderstorms that roll through Dallas and Houston, they drop golf ball and baseball-sized hail that totals cars and destroys roofs. Your insurance covers it minus your deductible, which is probably $2,500 to $5,000. And after you file a claim, your rates go up. Let's talk about the freeze. February 2021, the winter storm that shut down Texas and killed over 200 people. Temperatures dropped below freezing for days. Pipes burst in homes that were never designed for sustained cold. The power grid failed, and millions of Texans were without electricity for days in sub-freezing temperatures. Repair costs ran into the tens of thousands for homeowners dealing with burst pipes, water damage, and frozen HVAC systems. You thought that was a once-in-a-century event. Then December 2022 hit and Texas froze again. Not as bad, but bad enough that the grid nearly failed again, and people started panic buying generators because they learned the first time that the state can't guarantee you'll have power when you need it most. Flooding is the other nightmare. Houston floods, not occasionally, regularly. Hurricane Harvey in 2017 dropped 60 inches of rain in some areas and caused $125 billion in damage. The Tax Day flood in 2016, the Memorial Day flood in 2015, the Halloween flood in 1994, Tropical Storm Allison in 2001. Houston has flooded so many times that FEMA flood maps are constantly being redrawn, and if you're buying in Houston, you need flood insurance even if your mortgage doesn't require it. Here's the problem. Flood insurance is expensive and getting worse. The average cost in Texas is around $900 per year, but in high-risk zones near Houston, it can hit $3,000 to $5,000 annually. You bought a house outside the floodplain, so you skipped flood insurance. Then a 100-year storm drops 20 inches of rain in 24 hours, the bayou overflows, and your house takes on water. FEMA might help, but FEMA assistance is a loan, not a grant, and it won't come close to covering what you lost. The weather in Texas isn't just inconvenient, it's expensive, dangerous, and unpredictable in ways that compound every other cost we've talked about. Your insurance is higher because of hail. Your electricity is higher because of heat. Your emergency fund gets drained because of freezes and floods. And all of this is happening in a state where the power grid operates on a philosophy best described as "let's see what happens." Which brings us to the next truth, and it's the one that keeps people up at night. Truth number 3. The power grid is a gamble you didn't sign up for. Texas runs its own power grid. ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, operates independently from the national grids that cover the rest of the country. This independence is a point of pride for Texas, a symbol of self-reliance and freedom from federal regulation. It's also why your power goes out when you need it most. February 2021 was the stress test, and ERCOT failed catastrophically. The winter storm knocked out power to 4.5 million customers, some for days. At least 246 people died, most from hypothermia, carbon monoxide, dioxide poisoning from people running generators indoors, or house fires from desperate attempts to stay warm. The grid came within minutes of a complete collapse that could have left Texas without power for weeks or months. Why did it happen? Because ERCOT's grid isn't required to weatherize for extreme cold. Winterization costs money, and in a deregulated market driven by profit margins, power companies don't spend money on scenarios they consider unlikely. Natural gas plants froze, wind turbines iced over, coal plants went offline. The system failed at every level, and Texans paid the price. The summer of 2023 brought a different kind of crisis. Record heat pushed demand to all-time highs, and ERCOT issued multiple conservation alerts asking Texans to reduce electricity use during peak hours. The grid didn't fail, but it came close enough that the alerts became routine. Set your thermostat to 78 degrees Fahrenheit or higher between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. Don't run your dishwasher. Don't charge your electric vehicle. The state with some of the highest electricity production in the nation was asking residents to ration power because the grid couldn't handle the load. Here's the part that makes people furious. Texas has a deregulated electricity market, which means you can shop for power providers the way you shop for phone service. Companies compete for customers with promotional rates, fixed plans, and variable plans. It sounds great until you realize that during the February 2021 freeze, some Texans on variable rate plans saw their electricity costs spike to $9 per kilowatt hour, compared to the typical 12 cents per kilowatt hour. People got electric bills for $5,000, $10,000, $17,000 for a single month because the market allowed wholesale prices to skyrocket during the crisis. Griddy, one of the variable rate providers, collapsed under the weight of customer outrage and lawsuits. The Texas legislature eventually capped how much companies could retroactively charge, but the damage was done. Texans learned that their power grid operates on market principles, and markets don't care if you freeze to death as long as supply and demand are in balance. ERCOT's independence means Texas can't pull power from other states when demand exceeds supply. The national grids have interconnections that allow electricity to flow across state lines during emergencies. Texas doesn't. When ERCOT runs out of power, there's no backup. You're on an island, and the island's infrastructure was built to handle normal conditions, not the temperature extremes that are becoming the new normal. Generators became a status symbol after 2021. Whole home natural gas generators that automatically kick on when the power fails run $10,000 to $15,000 installed. Portable generators are cheaper but require fuel, and during emergencies, gas stations run out or lose power themselves and can't pump. You moved to Texas for freedom and low costs, and now you're budgeting 5 figures for a generator because you can't trust the grid to keep your family safe. One transplant from California told us, "I used to mock PG&E for the rolling blackouts during fire season. At least they told us when it was happening. Here the power just goes out, and you hope it comes back before your pipes freeze or your AC stops and the house turns into an oven." Picture this: August in Dallas. It's 105 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Heat index pushing 112 degrees Fahrenheit. You get a text alert from ERCOT asking you to conserve power. Your house is 78 degrees Fahrenheit and climbing because you're trying to be a good citizen. Then the power flickers, goes out, comes back, goes out again. You check your phone. No updates, no timeline. Just you, your family, and the creeping realization that the grid you depend on operates with margins so thin that a hot week can bring it to its knees. The grid will get fixed. Eventually. The legislature passed reforms after 2021, and ERCOT is adding capacity. But you're living through the transition period, and transition periods in Texas infrastructure tend to be measured in decades, not years. You signed up for low taxes and independence. You didn't sign up to wonder if the power will be on when you need it most. And the cruel irony? The reason the grid is under so much strain is because everyone else had the same idea you did. Truth number 2, you're not escaping California. You're recreating it. You moved to Texas to escape California's housing crisis. So did 300,000 other people. And therein lies the problem. Austin home prices increased 60% between 2019 and 2022, according to Zillow. The median home price in Austin hit $575,000 in 2023, up from $357,000 in 2019. You moved to Texas for affordability and found a market that's climbing faster than the one you left. Round Rock, Pflugerville, Cedar Park, the suburbs you targeted as affordable alternatives, saw similar spikes. Round Rock's median hit $465,000. Pflugerville crossed $425,000. These aren't tech hubs. These are suburbs that were affordable 3 years ago. Dallas-Fort Worth followed the same pattern. Frisco, McKinney, Prosper, Allen, the northern suburbs that marketed themselves as family-friendly and budget-conscious, saw double-digit year-over-year increases. Frisco's median home price climbed from $475,000 in 2020 to $625,000 in 2023. You're paying Dallas prices for a suburb that didn't exist 30 years ago. The cause isn't a mystery. Corporate relocations drove the surge. Tesla, Oracle, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise moved headquarters to Austin. CBRE, Charles Schwab, and dozens of other major companies relocated to Dallas-Fort Worth. They brought employees. Those employees brought families. And suddenly, you're competing with people who have Bay Area salaries and Austin budgets. When Oracle moved 10,000 employees to Austin, they didn't lower those employees' salaries to match Austin's cost of living. They kept them at California levels. Same with Tesla, same with Apple, which already had a massive presence in Austin and kept expanding. You're a local trying to buy your first home, or you're a transplant who took a Texas salary thinking it would go further, and you're bidding against tech workers who are still making $200,000 to $300,000 per year. Austin rents increased 48% between 2017 and 2022 according to Apartment List. A one-bedroom apartment that cost $1,100 per month in 2019 was going for $1,800 by 2023. Two bedrooms crossed $2,200 in desirable areas. You moved to Texas to save money on housing and found rent prices that rival cities you left behind. Here's the frustrating part. You're part of the problem, and so is everyone else who moved here for the same reason. The influx of transplants drove demand, which drove prices, which priced out locals, which created resentment, which created the Don't California My Texas bumper stickers, and the cultural divide that's now a defining feature of the state's politics. Native Texans will tell you bluntly that Californians ruined their state. Housing that was accessible to middle-class families is now out of reach. Traffic that was manageable is now gridlock. The relaxed pace of life got replaced by California hustle imported at scale, and the locals who can't afford to stay are being pushed to Killeen, Temple, Waco, San Angelo, cities farther from the economic centers where the jobs actually are. One Austin native told us off the record, "I was born here. My parents bought their house in Travis Heights for $150,000 in 1998. It's worth $1.4 million now. I make good money and I can't afford to live in my own neighborhood." That house went to a Google employee from Mountain View who paid cash. The irony is that the affordability you moved to Texas to find is evaporating because everyone else moved here for the same reason. You didn't escape California's housing crisis. You exported it, and now you're competing in a market that's climbing at California rates while your salary adjusted to Texas levels. Picture this. Saturday morning in Round Rock, you're scrolling Zillow, looking at houses listed at $480,000. The house you wanted in Pflugerville just went under contract after 48 hours, 12% over asking, all cash, no inspection. You refresh the page. Another house you bookmarked changed status to pending. The realtor calls and says if you want to compete, you need to waive contingencies and offer $30,000 over list. You moved here because Bay Area housing was insane. This is starting to feel familiar, which brings us to the hardest truth of all, the one that hits after you've already unpacked and realized something fundamental is off. Truth number one. The Texas you wanted doesn't exist where you can afford to live. Here's the truth nobody mentions until you've been here 6 months and the honeymoon is over. You didn't move to Texas. You moved to the idea of Texas, and the version you researched keep Austin weird, cowboy culture, hill country sunsets, independent spirit, wide open spaces, that Texas exists. It's real. You're just not living in it. You're living in Pflugerville, or Round Rock, or Kyle, or Frisco. Master planned communities built in the last 20 years, where every house looks like a variation of the same beige template, where HOAs regulate your mailbox color and fine you for parking in your own driveway overnight, where the amenities are a community pool that's always crowded, grid and a walking trail that loops past identical subdivisions. You moved to Texas for freedom and independence, and you ended up in the most regulated, most controlled, most aggressively planned version of suburban America that exists anywhere in the country. The Texas you wanted, the one with character and grit and history, is in Fredericksburg, Marfa, small towns in the hill country, neighborhoods in central Austin that were built before 1980, and you can't afford any of them. Fredericksburg homes average $650,000. Marfa is either dirt cheap and falling apart or expensive and gentrified for remote workers and artists. The Hyde Park and Travis Heights neighborhoods in Austin, median prices pushing $1.2 million to $1.5 million. That's not Texas affordable. That's California prices with Texas property taxes on top. So you compromised. You bought in the suburbs where you could actually afford the mortgage, and you told yourself it would be fine because you're still in Texas, and Texas is Texas. Except it's not. The suburb you live in could be copy-pasted to Charlotte, Phoenix, or Atlanta, and nobody would notice the difference. There's no local character, no history, no walkable downtown with coffee shops that have been there for 40 years. Just chain restaurants, big box stores, and subdivisions named things like Heritage Oaks and Silverleaf that were farmland a decade ago. Here's the cultural mismatch that nobody warned you about. You moved to Austin expecting Keep Austin Weird. Live music, breakfast tacos, a laid-back creative vibe, progressive politics. What you got depends entirely on which suburb you landed in. If you're in Travis County proper, you're in Blue Austin. If you're in Williamson County, Round Rock, Cedar Park, Leander, you're in a purple county that's fighting a culture war with itself. One transplant from Seattle told us, "I moved to Austin thinking it was liberal. My suburb banned books from school libraries and fought mask mandates like it was tyranny. I didn't move to Texas for that." But that's the Texas I got. The political and cultural reality of Texas varies wildly depending on where you can afford to live. Austin proper is blue. The suburbs are contested territory. Collin County north of Dallas used to be deep red. Now it's shifting purple as transplants pour in. You thought you were moving to a state with clear identity, and instead you landed in a battleground where your specific zip code determines whether you're in progressive Texas or conservative Texas. And the version you got might not match what you thought you were signing up for. And it's not just politics, it's lifestyle. You wanted the quirky independent Texas spirit. You got an HOA that sends violation notices if your trash cans are visible from the street after 7 p.m. You wanted space and freedom. You got a backyard that backs up to your neighbor's fence 3 feet away, and covenants that regulate everything from your roof color to whether you can park an RV in your driveway. Picture this: Sunday afternoon in your Frisco subdivision. You walk to the mailbox. Every house is the same shade of tan or gray. The HOA planted the same 3 species of trees at regulation intervals. You hear a lawnmower 3 houses down, identical to yours because the HOA has approved landscaping companies. You realize the Texas you imagined, rugged, independent, full of character, is a 90-minute drive away in some small town you can't afford to live in, and what you actually bought is a planned community so controlled and regulated it makes California suburbs look anarchic by comparison. You didn't move to the wrong state. You moved to the wrong version of the state. The Texas you wanted exists, but it costs $800,000 to $1.5 million to live there. Or it's in a small town with no jobs. Or it's in a rural area so remote you'd spend 3 hours a day commuting. The Texas you can actually afford is a generic Sunbelt suburb that happens to be located in Texas, but shares nothing with the culture and character you thought you were moving to. And by the time you realize the difference, you'd already sold your house in California, transferred your job, enrolled your kids in school, and committed to a place that doesn't match the research you did before you left. Remember that property tax bill from the opening? Turns out that wasn't the shock. The shock is realizing it's just the first surprise in a state full of them. Texas delivers on its promises. Lower taxes, bigger houses, more space. But the fine print nobody mentioned is that property taxes eat your savings. Infrastructure wasn't built for this growth. Weather drains your budget. The power grid runs on thin margins. You're importing California's affordability crisis at scale. And the Texas you researched doesn't exist where you can actually afford to live. This isn't a hit piece on Texas. It's a reality check. If you're moving here with open eyes, realistic expectations, and a plan that accounts for hidden costs, infrastructure strain, and the gap between marketed Texas and affordable Texas, you can make it work. People do it every day. But if you're moving here thinking you're getting California's economy with Wyoming's cost of living and Montana's character, you're in for a shock. Texas will take your money, test your patience, and force you to decide whether the trade-offs are worth it. For some people, they are. For others, the truth hits too late. If this hit close to home, hit the like button. If you moved to Texas and lived any of this, drop a comment with your story. Subscribe if you want real talk about American real estate, not the version the relocation companies are selling. And if you're thinking about moving to Texas, do your research, ask the hard questions, and make sure the version of Texas you're moving to actually exists where you can afford to live. Welcome to Texas. It's complicated.